Hey folks, so I wanted to do a video this week. I had a lot of inquiries about asking how I got started and just some hurdles that I had to overcome. And I think mostly people are just interested in how to get into this type of work themselves as a profession. So I think obviously it begins with a calling. This is something that I was at a very very young age. I was with the neighbor kids, and they would have problems, and we had this tree that we would meet under, and I would give them certain things to help with their problems, little pine cones or little bags of pine needles or bags of dirt or bags of stones. So, and I would say I was probably 8 or 9 doing that. And so I was always compelled to work with nature and to use the energy in nature, which I was very aware of at a young age, to sort of balance the difficulties that other people were having in their lives, and to use these items as a focal point, to remind yourself daily of what you're working for, what you are trying to get away from, and to keep your mind focused on positive aspects of your life. So at 19, like I said, I was always interested in this. I grew up in a very free family where I was allowed to study whatever religion I wanted to, and we also had a lot of pagan customs. We did not celebrate, we weren't Christian, and we did not celebrate Christian holidays like other people did. So we lived in a very rural area. We lived on a lot of land. We had goats and chickens and turkeys and a garden. And so this was our way of life. This was how we grew up. So pagan traditions were not far removed from us. And then, so 15, 16, I sort of knew I was called to do this. At 18, 19, I decided to go through the process online to become ordained. And at that point, I was in community college, and I actually had not gotten on the internet at that point. Like I said, I grew up in a very rural area. We had no internet, we had no computer. So even though I was born in 81, I was the only person in my high school class to not have a computer or to have gotten on the internet. So that wasn't where I got my research from. I got my research from books in the library. Any spare money that I had was either spent on music or going to Barnes and Nobles to buy a book. So in a way, I think that did not cloud my head like it has with other people. There is so much online, and some of it is junk, and it's great to read, obviously, and to read every source that you could possibly get your hands on or have access to. But it starts to cloud you after a while when you're not reading reputable sources. And it's easier I think, to research a reputable author and be able to look at somebody's book and see that they have written, 300 pages about this subject versus like one page online in a blog, So, so my head wasn't clouded with a lot of things that weren't true about paganism, about hoodoo, about root work. And like I said, I grew up on the land, and these were things that we did. If there was illness in our house, we cut an onion open and we put it on the windowsill to absorb the illness in our house. We had a kitchen witch hanging in our kitchen to protect our home and bless our food. These were very normal, common things that we did. So, and so that at 18, 19, I became ordained. I was going to community college, and I printed up a flyer, to start a little spirituality group, a pagan spirituality group. And I got one person. And that's one thing I've always been really good at, is not getting discouraged. So even though I only had one person, that was okay. And then I got on Witchbox not too long after that, and I posted a profile. And since I had grown up with my family's traditions, my whole life, I thought it might be other people might be interested in learning those. So I set up a profile to start teaching, pagan traditions, and and then I got a few, and I think I had two people at that point, or three people altogether, maybe, and and then I would say the next, it wasn't a business at that point. This was 15 years ago. So this was not a business for me. This was me beginning a spiritual group of people with like minds so that we could do things like celebrate the seasons and, enjoy our customs together and talk about your general, things that you have in common and philosophies on life. We like to have a group of people around us that are similar in view to us. That's very human. That's totally normal. And so I guess I was reaching out and seeing if maybe that was out there, if I could connect with that and see if there were other people interested in the same things I was. I got business cards. I would say that is the foundation point. Was I got business cards, and even if you're not a professional yet, even if you have a couple of skills to offer, say you can make candles, or you've been making mojo bags for 5 or 10 years. I got mine at vistaprint.com. They were I don't know, like $6 or $10 or something, and I put those suckers on every bulletin board I could think of to where there might be people like me or people who are interested in the things I was. So the library, my community college, I even would put them up in laundromats, stores, because you would be surprised with things like this that people don't know about. You would, and they're too scared to approach, because that's what our culture and our society has taught us, that you never know when somebody is looking for a sign, and your business card someplace is going to be that sign to them, to where they've always been interested and they've always had questions, but they never knew where to start. And then one day they see a business card for somebody who has similar beliefs. So that was my mindset. That was my philosophy. And I thought, hey, if I only meet one person and make a good friend, then, that was completely worth the effort. And, you can't, how could I go wrong? So that's how I started. And slowly but surely, I started doing hand fastings and alternative weddings for people. My first one was when I was 18 or 19. And through word of mouth, then I got another one, and then I got another one. And then I was teaching this spirituality group that I'd started, and I had, 2 or 3 members. Then I had 4 or 5 members, and then I was getting new members every year. And it's a slow process. Nobody is successful. Well, I'm not going to say that, that there's not people who are successful overnight, but most of us aren't. And then about 6 years ago, I started a shop on Etsy with the encouragement of one of my coven sisters. I had always made all of our items that we used for ritual, and we made all of our gifts for the solstices for each other. And she said, you should put this stuff on Etsy, and I'd never even heard of Etsy. So I looked on there, and it was like 20 cents to list something. So I figured, well, how, if I don't sell anything, then I'm out, a few bucks or whatever. And so I started listing my stuff on there, and it looked horrendous. I took the most awful photos in the world. I had absolutely no skill at photography. I'd had no classes. I knew nothing about the theory of it. I just didn't understand any of the rules or anything. So it was all trial and error, and everything looked hideous that I put on there. But I wrote my story on there, just like I'm telling you now and like I tell you in my videos. And I think that is what people connected with. So even though I had really shitty videos, or not videos, but photographs on there, I poured my heart and soul out into my profile, and I wrote in the descriptions every single thing I could possibly think of and every single thing that I knew about that item. And that was, I think, is a huge difference between what I was selling and what other people were selling. Because I would see people list, let's say an open roads candle. and then you'd click on it and it would say, this is an open roads candle. And it would give maybe the dimensions of it, and that, it cost $20. So it didn't explain anything about it. It didn't tell you where the idea of open roads came from, what it's used for. It didn't talk about abre camino, the herb, which is the traditional open roads herb. It didn't tell you what colors should go along with that candle, or what oils you should be using, or what deities or spirits you could call on to aid you in the open roads. So I packed all that stuff into my listings. And people loved it. People loved that they could click on it and they could learn cultural uses, historical uses, that there were natural ingredients in there. It meant a lot to people, and it showed them that I wasn't some schmuck selling an orange candle to somebody. So those are smaller tips, and I'm going to make a second part to this video because this is a lot to talk about. People getting into it, and just, the slow process of it. The other part of it was that when I started that business on Etsy, I was working a night job. I worked from about 6:45 in the evening until 2, 3, 4 a.m. I worked at a nightclub. I was managing there, and I started out serving. So I had 2 small babies at the time. My kids are 15 months apart. So I had I think when I started at the club, I had a 6-month-old, and then that would have made my daughter like 18 months or something like that. So hard work is key, and I've never been afraid of hard work. I've had to work hard my whole life. I have always gone to school full time and worked full time, or worked 2 jobs, and ambition is absolutely key if you're going to be successful at anything. So I had my 2 kids, and I was working at night, and that afforded me a little bit of extra money to start up this Etsy shop. And all of the things that I created to put in my shop were items that I already had everything for. Over the years, I had collected hang on just a second here. We've got a music issue.
Lord, I ride every freight train that is seldom.